Leadership, it's about saying, I am a product of my context.
Yes.
I can't lead the same way that I was managed, because we know that the people who managed us didn't like us. They didn't want to share with us. Verwoerd puts it better. He says, there is no expectation of educating a black person beyond a certain forms of labor. So our education was designed, not by accident, to curtail us to being forever janitors. So now you are a leader. Your job is to re-engineer that back, because you are a product of social engineering.
Hi, welcome to the NeuroEngineering podcast for leaders. This is where we talk about neuroscience, we talk about leadership, and we talk about human behavior. How can we leverage neuroscience to improve human behavior and to empower leaders to lead in a much more effective way? And my name is Veli, Ndaba, the NeuroEngineer. I'm all about helping people save themselves from themselves by applying neuroscience. So what I do is I transform minds from mental darkness to mental light. And that's what I'm passionate about. And this is what we are going to talk about today in terms of how we can transform people's minds using neuroscience, and also looking at the practical way to lead and different approaches to leadership and what really makes leadership effective. And are really leaders born, or are they made? I mean, those are some of the questions that we're going to tend to talk about. And I'm just so passionate, and I'm just so excited even today just to talk to our guest, a very special guest. And I think for me, before I do that, I'll just take you through, his colorful resume. And this resume is something that I look at and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, is this really one person? Or we are talking about a number of people combined into one. But first off, I'm just going to share with you that our guest today is someone who is a chancellor of the University of the Free State. He is a professor of practice in the Johannesburg Business School, known as JBS, in the College of Business and Economics. He is the former president of Business Unity South Africa, known as BUSA. And he is a chairman of the two listed entities. And I'm talking about the Bidvest Group, and I'm talking about the ArcelorMittal. So these are the two listed entities that he is the chairman of. And also he is a member of the Community of Chairpersons, COC, of the World Economic Forum. And he is an author of 2 books. These are not just 2 books, but the best-selling books. And I'm talking about Lift as You Rise. And I'm talking about Behold the Turtle. And in November 2001, he received the Presidential Award for his servanthood in South African industry and the economic empowerment of previously disadvantaged individuals. He is the recipient of the African Union's Lifetime Achievement Award for 2024 at the Africa Career and Gala Awards in recognition of exceptional contribution and achievement. He has been included in the Reputation Poll International's RPI 2023 list of the 100 most reputable Africans. The selection criteria are integrity, their reputation, their transparency, visibility, and impact. And also, he is the recipient of the 2023 ME Vision Academy Awards, exclusive recognition in successful leadership for consistently leading self and people successfully leading as a senior executive and CEO, successfully leading society in various impactful roles, and contribution to mentoring and inspiring future successful leaders. And, wow, it's a pleasure of mine to introduce to you our esteemed Professor Bonang Mohale. Good afternoon, sir. It's such a pleasure to have you here, and this is something that has been long coming, and I'm just so glad that we are here today, and we are really taking care and ensuring that we make the most of this opportunity. And truly, I'm just so deeply honored to have you here. And I just wanted to find something. So today we're going to talk about some issues around leadership. And I want to emphasize effective leadership. And then just to look at what really sets effective leaders apart from just ordinary leaders and leaders that don't really, impact that much. But before we get to that, I just want to share with you, beyond being a professor, and beyond being the chancellor that you are, and beyond being an author that you are, can you just share with us, how was it like for you growing up? How was your upbringing, and what are the main things that happened that's really influenced you to be the person that you are today?
I'm a product of many things that came together at the same time to inform who I am today, to define, describe, and shape this human being called Bonang. And to start, as I was coming here, I was listening to Talk Radio 702's Clement Manyatel. And Chief, I'll call him X for now because he's a dear friend of mine, calls in. They are talking about, at what stage do you talk to your children about sex? And he says, you need to wait until your children can converse in English. Because I struggle to name sexual body parts in isiZulu. Then the question that came to me to describe exactly how I was brought up, I say to myself, so what happens to us before the white people came to this continent? How were we talking about sex to our children? What happened to us and the duty of Abu Malume?
Yes.
What happens to us when we can't express ourselves in our own language? Because language is much more than who we are.
Yeah.
What happens to the poor children who live in the townships, but also in rural areas, who can't speak English? Then it means they should not be spoken to about sex. But as I sum it all up, I say to myself, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
Because we don't know who we are and what we stand for. We think intelligence is English.
Yeah.
We think going to school is English. We think being wise is English. Whereas our forebears were very leader-like, profound, and visionary, and they did it in Sesotho, Sepedi, Setswana. Bebakhuluma isiZulu,
Yes.
nesindebele,
Yes.
bebabulabula.
Yeah.
And at what stage did we decide to chuck that away and take on new things? As we sit here, absolutely cognizant of the fact that borrowed converses now pour from our lips, but borrowed robes hang from our neck. So, yes, I'm born in Katlehu, not far from here. It's walking distance.
Yeah.
And I went to school here all my life. Even though I only came here when I was 6, because the place where I was born, it's actually called Benoni, the modern day Rainsword, because my parents were forcibly removed. And then they built across the railway line another one now called Etwatwa. Yes. But this side of the railway line, it was Chinese, Indian, English, Jewish people that lived together in harmony, just like Sophia Town, just like District 6. At what stage, as a people with great natural endowments, are we going to yearn for this? Not just yearn, but to say, how can we use our positional power to bring it back? Because progress and moving forward in space and in time can't just be defined by others. We have to define it for ourselves. So I'm a township thug. Yeah. I still walk like a township thug. I think there's a problem when you walk into the bedroom of your daughter and you find her dreaming in English.
Yeah. Wow. You know, this is just so exciting. And when you look at you growing up in terms of when you think of leadership, is it something that you chose, or is it something that you think chose you? You know, looking at the influences around you, you know, growing up, are there a few instances where you look at and you say to yourself, wow, I think this something had a huge or a profound impact on me that drove me somehow to be the person that I am now in terms of leadership?
And we call it leadership.
Yeah.
And we ascribe it to certain people. And by definition, therefore, we deprive it of other people. Yeah. Nobody is just one thing. Even the good Lord, he's called Jehovah.
Yeah.
He's called Emmanuel. He's called Christ. Yeah. He's called Jesus. You are also called Ubaba, yeah. Umalume, Utatumnani. You are also called a worker. You are also called somebody's lover. You are also called a community leader. Therefore, when we ascribe it to certain people, we deprive ourselves of benefiting from the collective thought processes of the 62 million South Africans, 1.4 billion Africans, and 8 billion in this world. I had a driver, his name is Mazambane, and he drove me safely at Otis Elevators from 1996. Only when he had a funeral in Limpopo, he comes from, and I drove from Bedford View, where Susan and I lived, to his place. I found somebody who's a community leader. I found somebody who was the chairman of their church group, and yet I only knew him as a driver. His other skill was driving a nail through the wall in the most perfect, straightest of ways. Here is a leader that I looked at differently when we went back to 222 Marshall Street in downtown Joburg, and I knew that he wasn't just a driver. How many people have we not liberated because we didn't give them the word leadership? So to me, leadership is anybody that feels, it's a feeling, called upon to lead. It has nothing to do with what appears in your business card, yes, or your corner office, or the position that you occupy in an organization. And as I end, leadership also presupposes followership. Yeah. But good leaders know when to lead. But most importantly, know when to be led. Yes. I'm a leader at the Bidvest Group Limited, where I am chairman of the board. Nompumelelo Tembekile Madisa is the leader of the enterprise. Yeah. But when I go home, there's another leader who's called my boss. Her name is Susan. That house, she is the leader, and I submit to her 110%. And I do it willingly, happily, with absolute honor and humility.
Wow. You know, I was looking at, when I look at your resume and I'm seeing this thing, I mean, especially these three things. I'm talking about professorship. I'm talking about you, I mean, holding a position as a chancellor, you know, of the University of the Free State. And I'm looking at you as, you know, as someone who has achieved quite a lot, you know, in these spaces. I just want to find out, for someone, I'm just looking at someone who is listening to us and who's watching us, and in terms of want to be, you know, the professor, for you to be a chairman, what do you say, you know, it really takes? You know, what does it take? Maybe you can take us, how did you become a professor? And also, how did you become a chairman? You know, for someone who is still young, or someone who is still working, but he doesn't know about these things. What did you say about that? Well, so, first of all, maybe describing them. What is a professor and what is a chairman? And then what do they basically do?
Sure. You have really hit the nail on the head. Yeah. So all of us have a choice. Yeah. Whenever you get to occupy spaces where your people don't ordinarily occupy, yeah, you've got really two choices. You can continue to be the first and only, yeah, and celebrated, highlighted, and palleted. Or, on the other hand, you can choose to kick down the doors and bring in people that look like you. I think our primary function as leaders is to realize that we have been honored with these titles and positions to be temporary occupants of the corridors of power. So that we ask ourselves every single minute, how are we going to use this power to honor, glorify others?
Yeah.
Because we are no more human than when we help others. In fact, those that are helping others are completing God's work. Therefore, as a chancellor, ask myself the question, at what stage will we make the university to stop being foreign to a young lady that comes from Limpopo and comes here for the first time and sees a toilet that flushes for the first time? At what stage do we make this young lady to walk in the graduation hall, having spent 3, maybe 6 years with us at the University of the Free State, and they look on the walls, on the murals, and they feel home?
Wow.
Because this that we wear does not look like us. When she looks at the art on the walls, it doesn't look like us. Not only does it look foreign, but it looks outrightly hostile. And we do things 30 years into democracy to perpetuate that. We know that when you have graduated from Limpopo, it wasn't just your mother and father who sold the 8 cows to be able to pay for your education, but the entire village was praying for you. They would come and call you every vacation to say, read this letter for me, my little girl, so that you can practice your English, because somebody has sent it to me. And the day you graduate, not only are they going to form a guard of honor in your village, but they want to come to the university to witness you probably being the first in that whole village to graduate. And what we do, we say we'll only give you 2 tickets per graduate. Yeah. And yet there is not a single nuclear family that has only 2 people. And in Africa, we don't even describe it as a nuclear family because it's an extended family. Yes. That is family, period. 30 years into democracy, we haven't changed that. Therefore, as a chancellor, ask myself the question, what am I going to do as a direct result of my own input to make sure that we bring about an inclusive definition of academic excellence?
Yes.
At what stage do we bring about a social justice approach in how we assess merit? At what stage do we bring about public ownership of these 26 public universities and 1.2 million students? At what stage do we speak about a contextual freedom of expression? Because there is a way I speak to Babu Mazamban, who is my driver, yes, in a manner that honors the fact that he is my uncle, first and foremost. Yes. Therefore, I ask, I don't bellow instructions. And at what stage do we bring about a sustainable funding model in the short term to build a long-term notion called resilience, where we move from just 7% of our pupils go to university to 9%, to 11%. But we make it sexy that others don't have to be doctors and lawyers, that they can go to vocation school. Because that's how Germany makes the best cars in the world. They catch you at standard 8 and they teach you how to be a motor mechanic, and you buy a house in Leondale and in Don Park where Chris Hani was assassinated, and we call you a blue-collar worker. Those are the people that are best able to look after their children and after their babies, not just the doctors and the lawyers. That's what it means to be a chancellor. As a professor, I teach global MBA students in business and economics. But also at Gibbs, Nick Binadel and I take global MBA students and we teach them, not lecture, in strategy and ethics. And then lastly, because I'm a businessman, first and foremost, I'm not an academic. I chair the 4 boards, and you mentioned the 2. The other 2 that I chair is called Swiss Re Corporate Solutions Africa. I've been on that board for 18 years. The last one, it's called SBV Services. These are the cash in transit people. These are the people that are the only cash in transit that is allowed by the Prudential Authority, therefore the South African Reserve Bank, to collect money from the Reserve Bank and distribute it and collect it and check it and certify it and pack it and take it back to the South African Reserve Bank.
Wow, that was really a mouthful. And I'm listening to that and I'm just saying to myself, wow, how do you really manage? Because I'm sure someone is watching and is listening and is saying, but how do you handle, how to get to deal with all these things? And I think that leads me to my next question in terms of what does your day look like? You know, because we all have 24-hour days. And yours, what does it really look like? Because one of the things that I normally say is that life does not give you what you want, but what you are.
Wow.
So what are you? You are your consistent behaviors. You are your consistent actions. So those things that you do are the ones that will give you what you want. So we need to align our behavior with our goals. So people will be saying right now, but how do you get to achieve these things? Or what happens? I mean, how do you manage your time? So I just want to talk about the structure of your day. How do you normally structure your days? What do they look like? Maybe just a typical day, you know, for you. I know they may be different, but let's just pick one or two.
So first, it's a full appreciation that leaders don't have time.
Yeah.
They make time. For things that are important to you, you will make time. Secondly, because we're talking about the engineering of neuroscience.
Yes.
It's about saying science tells us that none of us are using even 10% of the capacity of our brain.
Yeah.
This is the mightiest computer. Yeah. Today we talk about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
But at what stage will we say this AI now has prescience? It can feel emotion.
Yeah.
And it can have empathy.
Yeah.
That it can predict the future.
Yeah.
That it can engage, interact, and interface with other human beings.
Yes.
Because the essence of humanity is justice.
Yeah.
Will AI be able to know and comprehend that equality is not justice? That is the science. The last one is the one that says you are what you consistently think about.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you think you are a product of a warrior of women and men, proud people that knew how to bring not only their children, but the entire village. That's why the expression, it takes a whole village to bring an African child.
Yes.
And we use it glibly without understanding that before every meal, your own parents will say, before we pray, take this food to Mema di Khetsi and bring the dishes from yesterday. When you come back, then they say, we can pray. Not close our eyes and pray, because not everybody closes their eyes when they pray. That the good Lord can be so unkind as to create human beings and put them in the southernmost tip of the continent without any form of prayer or worship. Every nation in the world, every tribe in the land, in the world, prays to a God that looks like them, except black people. Therefore, when you talk about, but what do we need to do to be leaders? It's that humility of saying, that's why when we introduce ourselves, I would never say I'm Bonang. I'm saying I'm Bonang Mohale. Yes. When you hear it, the big computer goes, bing, you say Mohale. Which Mohale? Which village? You're making the connections. Therefore, in our introduction, you say, I am Bonang, but the son of Lidinka Kai, who is a product of Chabasiwile, of Murena Mushweshwe. Now, you cannot make a fault of bringing your first cousin home as somebody that you've fallen in love with because you asked, who are you? And then your parents to look at you and say, you've been kissing your cousin. It would never happen because that's what we do to filter, to make sure that we each find ourselves a partner that suits us. Kasi soto utole mufumahadi ya utshwanetseng.
Yes.
The one that is meant for you. That's why we ask this question. Therefore, for me, this notion of leadership, I take it extremely seriously because with it, we can bring about proper transformation. Not just transformation of the hue, the color of the people in the C-suite. Not just transformation of saying we need to be broadly reflective of the demographics. The transformation that says it is very clear that we are so eager as South Africans to get into political office that we never thought deeply and profoundly about what we are going to do with that power to improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people, a better life for all. That we never really interrogated how we are going to change the system, because the individual doesn't succeed, the system succeeds. That's why 30 years into democracy, we can, with science, with proof, with dispassionate facts, say the people that benefited the most in the 30 years are the Jewish people, the Afrikaners and the Muslims. One, because they had capital, but because their way of life, not just their religion, not just their form of faith and worship, not just their spirituality, talks to the very same thing, because first, they know who they are. They start by first asking the question, do you as a family and a community sit around the table and regularly talk about how to make money? Yeah. Do you as a family and as a community regularly buy from each other and one another? Yeah. Lastly, do you as a family invest in and refer business to each other and one another? If you did only those three, there will be no such thing as the dark continent. Yeah. There will be no such thing as poverty still has primarily a black and a feminine face. Therefore, those are the things that keep me awake at night. I cannot wait to jump out of bed to make my small contribution, because the nugget, the nexus of leadership, it's about humanity.
Absolutely. When you look at, let's look at your typical Wednesday. You know, it's a typical Wednesday that we are looking at. What time does it normally start? You know, I'm just picking Wednesday. You know, it could be Tuesday as well, but starting from like the mornings, you know, when do your day start? I mean, does it start like at this time and it ends at that time? And what does it look like?
I live in Bryanston, so I'm woken by the sound of Hadidas. Oh. I'm from Katlehong, where I used to be woken up at 4 by the Sasco Blue Ribbon trucks that came to deliver bread in the township. And yet our mothers knew how to break bread. Yeah. And yet our mothers knew how to transact with one another in that same street. So I would normally wake up with these sounds of birds. Okay. Because it doesn't matter what yesterday was like. Every morning, birds start with a prayer and a word of gratitude to say, thank you, Lord. Because I didn't know what I was going to eat yesterday, but I ate to my satisfaction. I don't know what today holds, but I know I'm going to eat. Because that's what birds do. They don't grow anything.
Not true.
But with that gratitude. So do we wake up every morning with saying, sleep is a right, but waking up is a privilege? Because not everybody else wakes up, and just be grateful. So first, I would be woken up by these sounds of birds, this magnificent music as they chime and they pay homage to their creator. And it allows me time to think and reflect on what I did yesterday that was meaningful and to plan the day ahead. I'm helped by 2 amazing people at home. The one is our helper, the other one is a gardener. There happen to be 2 of them outside. So I have to open for them if I'm late at 6:30 in the morning. Okay. By that time, I make sure that at least I've opened the doors, I've switched off the alarm and the beams and the electric fence. Yes. Because this is Joburg after all.
Yes.
And then after that, I'll normally take a cold shower. I normally don't talk about this often.
Same here.
Only because when I was younger at Len Thomas House, MBBCH, first year, 17th of April 1981, we had hosted some of the people that were in exile, Bosichaba Muntsitsi, at Len Thomas House, Bomefi Murobe.
Yes.
And they told us that...
Which university was this?
Wits.
At Wits, yes.
The University of the Wits. Yes. But because of Group Areas Act, we couldn't sleep in town. Yes. So they had to house us in Baragwanath Hospital, the modern day Chris Baragwanath Hospital. I want to talk about the fact that we wasted an hour each way, every day, an hour coming back. We're already disadvantaged, but we wasted 2 hours a day, every day, and yet we wanted to compete with these white people. In that, I learned that, you know what, we need to make sure that we double up. Yeah. To us, life can be wake up at 9, knock off at 2, because we think that's how rich white people live. It's about saying we are closing the gap of 370 years of colonialism, 98 years of separate development, 48 years of institutionalized apartheid. How do you close that? By working doubly as hard, by making sure that every minute counts, by engaging, interacting, and interfacing with other human beings, by connecting with other black people, because together we can do more. So I want to make sure that in everything that I do, planned for that day, that I'm going to meet people that look like me. Yes. And together we say, how can we make sure that we finish our own struggle and we finish our own war to liberate our children so that they can fight their own war? Lastly, I end that day by saying, can I ask myself a question that says, honestly, we need to build our own businesses and hire our own children, because I think it is madness to continue to make babies and then send them to a different neighborhood for them to go down on their knees and ask somebody else for a job. Yeah. I'm a good Catholic boy. Even 1 Timothy 5, verse 8 says, a man that cannot look after his family is worse than an unbeliever. So I'm happiest when I'm with family. I'm happiest when the good Lord gives me the means to be able to fend for my family. I'm happiest when I can say, I know what my mother and my father, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law have eaten last night, because I know what they're going to eat tonight. That is my job. It is my moral obligation. No, it's not black tax. It's a privilege.
Yes. Wow. You know what? I just really love that, because many people just wake up not really knowing what's going on. And what has been shown as well, I mean, like from the brain perspective, neuroscience, like I was saying, the brain it's a goal-seeking organism. It's always looking for something that it needs to do. But if you don't give that to the brain, then it becomes frustrated and it becomes confused. And also that leads to anxiety and then depression, because you don't know what you need to do. So when you set goals, when you write down a clear plan, it helps you to be able to stay focused, that when you go to bed, you are not full of anxiety. You know exactly that I'm going to do this tomorrow. And you even actually come up with better ideas to do it in your sleep, because you know already how your day is going to look like tomorrow. At least something that you can plan. So that's something that's very important, and that I thought I need just to say from neuroscience perspective. And when you look at, now when we shift a bit and look at, I mean, in a corporate space, we're talking about leaders. We're talking about, here we talk about effective leadership. And when I talk about effective leadership, also based on my latest book, the Neuroscience of Effective Leadership, I'm just talking about the leader's ability, to create, or capacity or capability to create an environment where there's respect and where there's trust, in their teams, so that everyone can bring themselves to work and with that smile on their face, but bringing their best selves to work. And that's what effective leadership is about, where people don't feel threatened, where people don't feel that, I'm just doing this. It doesn't mean that people are going to be happy all the time, but for you as a leader, you need to make, sort of like devise some means and have a way on how you connect with people. And I think when I chatted with you earlier, and I was saying studies and also people that I've communicated with or conversed with in terms of leaders that are said to be effective, they're very humble. So humility is one of the number one thing that is in them. And when you look at things like, when they talk with people, they speak their mind. And when they speak their minds, and that is something that's very important, because you know where they stand. But one thing about it, they can be easily mistaken with being soft, when they are actually not soft, but they are humble and they are firm, in what they do. Someone who is humble, it's normally said that he's soft. but that doesn't really clarify the whole thing about leadership. So I want to find out from you in terms of effective leadership, which I classified you, to be one of those effective leaders that are able to respect people in that. And what did you say? Do you think that leaders are born or they're made based on what you have seen? What did you say around that? What makes really a good leader for you?
The answer is both.
Yeah.
And together at the same time.
Yeah.
Concurrently,
Yeah.
simultaneously, and in parallel. Because we are never compartments.
Yes.
We are continuums.
Yes.
We are a spectrum.
I like that.
We are a potpourri. And I want to pick up on, you said something very profound, but you said 16 of them in one sentence. I'll just pick up on one. Goal-seeking organisms.
Yeah.
3 profound words.
Yeah.
Organisms. Because organisms are never static.
Yes.
They are growing. They are developing. Getting better today compared to yesterday.
Yes.
In search of excellence.
Yes.
That's how they find meaning and purpose. But we are also sense-making human beings. Mm-hmm. That's why to us, it's not the what. We are always asking why. Why? Lastly, in answering this question, for me, leadership can't be in and of itself. Leadership has to ask the question, if wealth is the inevitable outcome of both hard work and enterprise, then every woman in Africa should be a dollar billionaire.
Yeah.
And ask ourselves, why are they not? Because they're doing the work. They're putting in the effort. They wake up at 4 every morning and they are not back until 9. They're tilling the fields. They're managing us as older children amongst their broods of kids. They're managing the budget. And if you can trust them with that, why don't we trust them with our enterprise to run our companies? Because the primary caregivers are women. Women do more work that is not paid for than by men. So they've already connected in a profound way with other human beings. COVID has taught us many things. One of the things that it taught us is that of the 198 countries that were affected and infected by the COVID-19, 8 of them dealt better with the virus than all others. And all 8 had women as head of state, including New Zealand and its 5 million people.
Oh.
Germany's Angela Merkel, and the entire Nordic countries, not just the Scandinavian countries. But also science, because we are talking about science and engineering, tells us that companies that have women as head of those companies command higher multiples upon exit. They are more profitable. They are the best company to work for. Its employees feel needed and wanted. They are more freer to speak their mind. They are more joyful at work, and their companies are the best companies to work for. And yet we find it difficult to create space for women to come and lead us.
Yes.
I tell you, if the world was led by women, we'd have fewer wars. Because half the wars in the world are caused by religion. The other half by men's ego. And women don't have half that ego. Therefore, for me, leadership, it's about saying, I am a product of my context.
Yes.
I can't lead the same way that I was managed, because we know that the people who managed us didn't like us. They didn't want to share with us. Verwoerd puts it better. He says, there is no expectation of educating a black person beyond certain forms of labor. Yes. So our education was designed, not by accident, to curtail us to being forever janitors. Yes. So now you're a leader. Your job is to re-engineer that back, because we are a product of social engineering. How do we undo it so that we create this level playing fields?
Yes.
For me, leadership is about saying, can I use this office to make sure that everybody who's a member of my team feel that they can contribute and they've got the same chance as the MD, CEO, and the president of this country, beyond just having some sort of a compelling vision and courage, but also having integrity. Because this is the one that is less sexy about wholesomeness, so that people are not second guessing you, because you lead by example. You never ask your people to do that which you yourself are not prepared to do. Won't it be amazing when you are a leader of the army and they come from Angola in 14 trains at the old Joburg Gen station, and the first train comes and they find the commander-in-chief waiting for them to shake every single solitary one of them, and the train passes, and they know that you're going to be there for the other 13. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to sound clever. They know that you've got their back, the same way that we promised that will be our sisters keepers.
Wow. And this is, there are a number of things to touch on that. I think what I want to ask is, in an organization, how do you currently sort of encourage creative thinking? Where people can come up with these ideas and that will end up, making a difference. How do you encourage that? And how do you see it through?
First of all, we have a structure.
Yeah.
Secondly, we say it's okay to come out of the structure for good reason. Thirdly, we have a standard agenda from the board to the teams. We always start with HSSE as an acronym for health, safety, security, and environment.
Yes.
Because we are products of those. You see, our forebears had a close, personal, intimate relationship with nature. They were nature, and nature was them.
Yeah.
They looked after nature, and nature rewarded them by feeding them in abundance. They would never overfish. They knew the months of the year when these fish were spawning, therefore you didn't want to kill them because you needed them to bring up their babies so that next year you've got more fish to catch. Springboks were roaming wild, but they would never kill more than they needed. If they did, in their likely event, because maybe others have moved, that's where they came up with their own refrigeration, which we now call biltong. Yeah. Because they didn't have refrigerators. So biltong is very African in its nature, where you cut and then you'd expose it to fresh air, because you knew that the best preservative, the same way that light is the best disinfectant. We knew that. And that to me really says it's about liberating people to understand that first and foremost they're about nature. So before we start any board meetings, we start by saying, are we all in the room? Present in the present, not just in the moment. So that we give people space for them to say, you know what, I only went to bed at 2 o'clock this morning because my 2-year-old cried the whole night and I didn't know what was wrong with my 2-year-old. So that we look them in the centerpiece of the pupils of their eyes and say, so what the hell are you doing here? Because you should be with the little one. Because when your body is here, your mind is at home, you are not here.
Very true.
It's like asking the question when somebody says, I love you. Do we ever interrogate it to say, what do you mean when you say you love me? So that I'm able to understand what you loved about me to continue to accentuate that.
Yes.
So that I don't do the things that you don't love. But most importantly, so that because I know why you loved me, I'll be able to guide you in how you should love me, rather than leave it to you to second guess me. And when you guess, you'll get it wrong. And then I leave you looking for love somewhere else, because I never really answered the question for myself. And it goes back, but who am I? What am I doing here? For what good reason have I been brought here? Sometimes in English, we call it purpose. So we allow people to start first with the first, because the company is not the bricks and mortar.
True.
It's not even the products and services that we provide. It is the people. So if the people are the company, do you tell them that they're the company? Do you treat them like the company? Yeah. Do you do everything possible to palette, highlight, and celebrate them? Because if you did, we wouldn't talk about the living wage. Yeah. We wouldn't talk about a minimum wage. We'll do what Henry T. Ford did when he launched his first Model T car, to say we want to build the type of cars that our own employees can afford. How many of us even think that do our employees afford the products and the services that we provide? Let me just end by saying we also run our meetings in such a way that we all have an appreciation of the job of a CEO. And the job of a CEO is no more than 5 things. Number 1 is people, because that's the company. Number 2, it's about culture. What type of culture do you want to create here? Fearful culture, where people feel they're just a pair of hands, where they are not co-creators and co-crafters with us. Thirdly, it's about reputation management, because people want to do business with people that they trust, love, and respect. Fourth, it's about stakeholder management. And a stakeholder is defined as anybody that is likely to have an impact in your business. Lastly, in that order, it's about the numbers. How many of us think we are clever when we start about the numbers and not the people?
And I think, would you say in most organizations, because like where the board has failed itself, because there's a CEO, there's a board, there's a CEO, and then you've got the executive team and seniors, and like as it goes down. And would you say failure comes as a result of that wrong order or reversed order, where bottom line becomes the main thing? Because you see a lot of toxic leaders getting rewarded by getting promoted. So it means you are promoting toxicity. What did you say? And also coming back to this thing of culture, culture becomes, because culture is basically, it answers the question of this is how we do things here. Because it's basically about the expression of the values. And values, they end up just being written on the walls. And how do you ensure that, especially as the chairperson of the board, to say the culture is actually lived, to ensure that these values are there for a reason and everyone is going to live by these values? How do you ensure that actually happens as a chairperson of the board? Maybe just take us through that between the chairperson and the CEO and the executive team. How do you make sure that there's alignment in that? Because you don't want to have a situation where, it becomes an animal farm, where animals are more equal. We are all equal, but others are more equal than others, because that's a reality. So where do you think the disconnect happens, where others feel that they're more protected? And that's toxicity, because people are even scared to go to work. What did you say around that? Where is the main failure, in terms of living as per the values and ensuring that culture is, is implemented? Maybe based on your experience and your experiences as well.
And you put it so beautifully. So the first, it's a full appreciation that it's about role clarity and definition.
Yeah.
We all have bits and pieces to be done.
Yeah.
2, it's about trust. Trust that you will do what you said you will do at the time that you said you will do it at. Yeah. That's all. Because once that trust first is extended, and then you promise, I can go to bed knowing that it's covered.
Yes.
You've got this. Lastly, it's about saying, yes, what has brought us together here is all of us, let us agree that we are going to turn left 1 degree. Therefore, it's never the expectation that the CEO must come with a plan. No. The expectation is for the CEO to rally the troops and bring them in the room and say, guys, what do you think the problem is? Because the people that work with this know what the problems are.
Yes.
But also because they know the problems, 9 out of 10 times, they also have the solutions. Can you create an environment where they speak honestly, openly, and transparently about their problems?
Yes.
So that you shut up and you give them an opportunity to tell you what the solutions are. Then lastly, to say who is going to do what when. And this is how the structure becomes important. Because you have answered probably the 4 or 5 fundamental questions at an individual level, so that it comes up to the corporate level.
Yes.
Then number 1, again, it's about purpose. Why are we here? Number 2 is where are we going to play?
Yes.
So that we're not everywhere. Thirdly is how do we play to win? Winning is personal.
Yes.
But for a company, we need to say we will win when we can say we are a 20 billion rand trading profit company from 150 billion revenue entity. It's putting a stake on the ground. Yes. But at a personal level, we're interested as a company. We ask you, what does winning for you mean? Because we want to use the resources of the company to make you realize your own personal goal. Because if you can realize your personal goal, you'll come back and help us to realize the corporate goal. How many companies say, it's not about you here? Help me achieve this. I don't care where you come from. I don't care there was no electricity, load shedding, there's no water. You're here to work.
Yes.
No. Good companies are the ones that say, how far are you from your personal dream? And what can we do to help you achieve that? Even if the personal dream is to leave the company and start up your own. That's where clever companies say, here's a piece of money, go and start it up. And we will buy 40% equity. And you don't interfere. Yeah. It's called a startup. But it starts with that. And then the penultimate one is about saying, what skills do I need? Skills, because you have to accept that everybody has been brought to this world for a purpose. There is no such thing as a useless person. There is no such thing as a lazy person. If you are lazy, it means you are not being stimulated. Yeah. You don't feel engaged. You know that you are much more than what you have become. We use an expression that says, you are a square peg in a round hole.
Yes.
One of the fundamental jobs of a leader, instead of labeling people and saying you are useless, it's about saying you've got different skills for what I've given you. Tell me what you're passionate about, and I move you to that department. How many of us have the carte blanche to move people based on their passion? That's why when a room full of people and somebody needs to go and close the gate, you don't say, you stand up and close the gate. You say, amongst us, who's passionate about safety? And then somebody goes. You always ask people to volunteer. You don't volunteer them. Lastly, it's about saying, who is going to help you? Who's going to help you? Accepts that there is no successful person in the world who's ever reached there on their own. Yeah. All of us need other people to help us.
Yes. And maybe just to add to that, what did you say maybe are the two main qualities, or maybe three at that really, that you can just put a finger to and say, this or these are the three main qualities that make a good leader or an effective leader? Because I think that's something we are sharing this for people so that they get to understand that, to say these are the three main things that you need to have. You cannot afford not to have them as a leader for you to be impactful and to be effective. Because the other one you're talking about, the lack of consequence management. When people do something wrong, and I think maybe we look at that because you're saying if you don't have these, then what happens? We classify that as leadership failure. What would you say are those three main things? I know there are so many things, but when you talk about like the no-nos, to say every leader needs to have that.
Sure, I love that. So let's start with just that failure. First, it's about accepting that as a leader, it's about doing things that to others might appear counterintuitive. Let's go back to our earlier discussion. It's about being comfortable. To fire an individual that gives you 60% of the profits, but have not lived the values of the company. Without worrying, where are we going to make up the 60% of profits? Yes. Because the reason why companies go on strategy planning sessions and they start by saying, here's our vision, a dream on top of the mountain. Here's our mission, our reason for existence. Yes. And they say, these are the 4 or 5 objectives. Before that, they then say, but what are our values? Yeah. And if there are more than 5, it's not meaningful because you'll forget.
Yes.
Values are the true north.
Yes.
Values are the lighthouse. The ocean might be angry and go up and down, but the lighthouse maintains its distance. It doesn't shift. It's not fair weather. That's why when a superstar, a rock star in your own organization breaks their values, they go.
And just to come in there, so there must be examples, because the problem is where people are doing exactly just that, because they are said to be contributing hugely to the bottom line, but they're not living the values. Have you, at a personal level, fired superstars?
The same way that we say strategy is followed by the organogram.
Yes.
You start first with, these are the 3-4 things that needs to be done. Then you look and say, amongst us, who is best positioned to deliver that? And we call it structure.
Yeah.
But some people start first by saying, no, you see, you will be the president of the country. You'll be first deputy president. You'll be the second deputy president. Oh no, we need 33 ministers.
Yeah.
Without saying, we went to Robben Island because we wanted a better life for our people.
Yeah.
Who is then going to deliver a better life? And then you look around and say, who is that selfless leader?
Whoa.
That's where it starts.
That's
where it starts. So in my own organization, why values are important is because values come handy when it's more difficult to make decisions.
Yes.
When there's uncertainty, ambiguity.
Yes.
When Johnson & Johnson wake up one day and say, we have stumbled upon this thing that cures African river blindness. But the 1.4 billion people that live in Africa can't afford the cost of this drug.
Yeah.
But we were looking at an antidepressant.
Yeah.
And we're looking for an anti-hypertension medication. Yeah. And that's what we wanted, and we stumble upon this. And they say, what do we do now? Half the executives say, there's no money in this, put it in file 30. The other one say, our bonus this year depends on this. They come up with a solution that says, this can't go to file 13. We can't do it because everything we touch is gold-plated. We must find a partner that will deliver it to Africa, and will make it available to them free, because we don't want to make money. That's values. Because they looked at their values and say, we can't. Therefore, with us, when do values trump everything else?
Yes.
When we say we put people first before what? We need to say first before profit, which means everybody has the ability and capacity to interrupt the making of profits for the sake of the people.
And by the way, I love that so much. You know, when you're qualifying that question to say you're putting people first, because, you know, I've worked with some clients where people are saying, you know, we put people first. I mean, the question is first before what? You know, that when you're saying like first before bottom line, so that's something that must be shown.
Exactly. And the other one that we don't answer for ourselves is the one that says we want an inclusive socio-economic growth. Then we need to pause and say, who do we want to include?
Yeah.
And when we answer it honestly, it can only be, we want to include black people and women. Of course, there are people with disabilities. Of course, there's LGBTQI plus community. Yes. But so that it's not 10 things and you lose focus, start with those two.
Yes.
Because once you start with those two, then it shows that you yourself are ready. Therefore, I fired CEOs that have abused their credit cards. Because if they can't be trusted with the assets of the company, what else are they going to steal? And I fired them not because of the quantum of the money. Yes. Because I say, there's a problem when you as the CEO say to your daughter at home, no, honey, don't worry about the HB pencil and the photocopying paper. I'll bring that from work. Because when you do that, you are then giving permission to the rest of the organization to start taking the head office home, one brick at a time.
Yes.
Because in leadership, it's not what you say. It's monkey see, monkey do. Therefore, organizationally, you have to agree the values, and the standard values, as I speak to you, must be honesty, must be integrity, must be respect. Nothing beats that. Can I catch you stealing from me red-handed and I fire you in such a way that you feel respected? As you pack your paraphernalia and say, I did this which I was not supposed to do. It is in my employee booklet. That's how people will remember you.
Yes.
Not what you said,
yes,
not what you do, not the title, but how you made them feel. That's why in leadership, we always palette, highlight, and celebrate in public, but we chastise in private. Because even the Bible says, correct me, O Lord, when I'm wrong.
Yes.
But not in anger, but in justice. Because if you do, you'll bring me into nothing. Therefore, at the personal level, we say, lift as you rise. Because that's how you find meaning and purpose. That there is nothing more powerful for the heart than extending a hand down and lifting another human being. It doesn't say lift after you have risen. It's a continuous tense. You take 2 steps in the ladder of success, you extend the hand down. Because that's what makes you interconnected with other human beings. There is nothing much more profound than humanity. But it says if you're a government, the best amongst us, lead with the heart of a servant. Because servant leadership is not the leader with many servants. It says nature is a wonderful metaphor for business. Because nothing that nature does it for itself. Everything that nature does, it does for others.
Yes.
Therefore, nature is not self, but the other-centered. It's like pretty much like falling in love. That's why rivers don't drink their own water and trees don't eat their own fruit.
Yes.
The sun doesn't shine because itself needs the vitamin D. Flowers don't give us this wonderful fragrance because they themselves want to smell like Fontainebleau in summer versus Calcutta when it's 46 degrees on the shade and it's hot and humid. It's about saying, before you become a millionaire, make somebody else a millionaire. It sounds counterintuitive, but it allows you the freedom that the day you become a millionaire, that you can enjoy that. Because, you see, science and engineering teaches us that the scientists will look very funnily at a monkey that acts out of character, that hoards all the bananas to itself when the rest of the troop is starving, when the congress of monkeys are starving. Because its very survival depends on this troop. Yes. When the one is on the top of the tree to look and say, hey, the lion is coming, bring the children up so that we are safe. The one at the bottom says, hey, there's a python here. It looks thin and hungry. We don't want it to be their lunch. And yet with human beings, when they do that, they hoard only for themselves. We put them on the front cover of Forbes magazine and we remember them. We palette, highlight, and celebrate them. But that's not how we were brought up. When you came to a village and the whole village had cattle, that fields, and they were tilling the fields, and you came in as a stranger, you had nothing. Each one of the members would give you, if it's just 2 cows, a bull and a cow. And the expectation was, when you have your own head of 20 and somebody else comes here, that you need to lead this charge and pay it forward.
Absolutely.
That's why there was no such thing as extreme starvation, because we knew that we're interdependent, that you are because I am. But most importantly, when I look at you, I see myself. Therefore, how can I hate myself? How can I beat myself? How can I deprive myself? How can I steal from you? Because if I steal from you, I steal from myself.
I wanted to raise 2 things, and I think one of them, we spoke about this monkey see, monkey do, phenomenon. So as it goes. From the brain perspective, when you look at it, it was found that we've got, in the mainly also in the prefrontal cortex, and that we have neurons that are called mirror neurons. They were actually firstly discovered in monkeys at the University of Italy by Razzolatti, Professor Razzolatti. What was found was that when a monkey was eating a banana, or let's say it was eating a banana, and they measured, because they were measuring something, those mirror neurons, they were firing. But it happened that the person who was conducting an experiment, he took the banana and he was eating it, not being aware that the monkey was watching. And as it was watching, the same neurons started firing. And it wasn't an experiment. The experiment was to check something else on the monkey. That's how, therefore, these mirror neurons were discovered, to say they get activated when you do something and when you watch someone perform the same act. So that's the reason why, therefore, it was found that as children learn better by watching adults. Because when they watch adults, these mirror neurons, it also leads to something that is called brain-to-brain coupling. So it means when I watch you do something that I can do, the same neural activities get activated in my brain. So when a young one looks at their parent or the elder doing something, it means they become validated to say, no, it's okay for you to do it. And like coming back to that issue to say, as a leader, you do this thing, and then those that you lead, they say, no, it's a good thing then, for we can do it too, because I mean, like you can do it. So it's something that is based, that is actually, that evolved with the brain. We have it is not just by mistake. And I think that was number one, just to look at this monkey see, monkey do phenomenon. The second one is, have you found the board that has failed to perform its duties? And as well as where the CEO has been sort of like pushing things underneath the carpet because they know who are the leaders that are not treating people well. And people are screaming because right now I was listening on radio, I think this morning, someone was saying, I don't look forward to go to work. And someone was asking, but why? He said, I'm looking at things like there's a lot of favoritism at work, there's a lot of inequality, there's a lot of toxicity. So when you look at those three things, they are against, or they move against what is called the core human needs, where you want to feel respected, where you want to feel that you're not micromanaged, you are given space to perform and do your duties. So in such instances, what do you do as a chairman of the board, for an example, to ensure that people are able to express whatever the views that they share, in these surveys, are actually attended to? Because people are always raising these issues, and we're not talking about something here that is sort of like that is just theoretical. They even get scared at some point to say, I don't want to write this because I know I'm gonna be, I'm gonna face some retribution. So what do you do therefore at a board level? That's the reason why I'm asking this question, because failure may start there before people start living, and because there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress because of leadership failure. So how do you as a board, like as a chairman of the board, for an example, do to ensure that people feel free to express their views so that issues are addressed?
Sure. I'm jumping up and down with absolute excitement because, again, you hit the nail on the head. Let me start first with the mirror neurons.
Yeah.
That this monkey see, monkey do, therefore, as leaders, we need to lead by example.
Yeah.
That it's not what we say, but what we do.
Yeah.
You sum it all up, it says, and this is best illustrated with children, that learning itself is experience. Otherwise, it is just information.
Yes.
That's why when we bring our children up, they don't know red, they don't know apple, they don't know cold.
Yes.
And we say, whenever we have an opportunity, oh, my darling, this is a red apple. Can you touch it? How is its skin? It's nice and smooth. You look at that color, it is red. It means nothing to them. Yeah. You then say to them, what else do you have in your wardrobe that is red? Yeah. So that they relate it to something. And say, no, my jersey that you bought me last week is red. No, but my bicycle is red. They make the connection.
Yes.
Associations. That's the mirroring. But what we forget is that this starts long before we're even born. Because by the time we measure it, it has been happening. Like in leadership, we do stuff only after we give it names.
Yes.
Science tells us that it is the third trimester of pregnancy that the unborn fetus, this human being, starts tasting the mother's taste through the placenta, smelling the mother's smell, but hearing the mother's sound. Because when humans are born, they're blind. They can't see. But when a baby is born in the hospital, that night, which is on Christmas Eve, 28 babies are born just in Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. Immediately after birth, this young lady feels absolutely relieved that I've executed my primary duty and goes to the loo. Just giving birth. And all the babies cry. The mother knows which one is the sound of my baby. The mother knows. You go to Masai Mara at the Ngorongoro crater. There's 1.5 million wildebeest that do the migration every time without fail. And they each drop their babies almost at the same time. There's 500,000 babies that are dropped.
Sure.
As they drop, because there has to be coordinated, because if they don't, when the lion comes, somebody's going to be lunch.
Yeah,
Immediately after dropping, the lions come, and they all run helter-skelter. These kids have never even suckled their mother's milk. But when they come back, the parent calls, and the little one knows that sound. Because they've been listening to that sound in the last trimester. That's why the bond of a mother and a child is so deep, profound, and just inexplicable. If you are a man, you understand that. You'll always want to complement and supplement. Even when you divorce this month, you'll never speak ill of your wife, because you know that that connection comes all the way from up above.
Yes.
And it is born in nature, forged in fire and blood. When you respect that, you'll find your duty as a man becomes that much easier, because you'll never compete for the attention of your children, because they started 9 months before you.
Yeah.
That first trimester, even in your wildest dream, you can't get. Your money will not be able to buy it. Therefore, we come back to the world of work and say, how then do we fail? We fail because we forget this call and response.
Yes.
That human nature is about that. When I feel validated, needed, and wanted, when I'm encouraged, there's nothing I wouldn't do. In a marriage, when your family recognizes that dad always wakes up in the morning to go and fetch the bacon, and he comes back, and they just accord you that respect because it's your job, not because you're looking for accolades. Guess what? The next day you'll kill a buffalo, even though the buffalo is bigger than you. Because human nature, all of us, men and women, young and old, black and white, we want encouragement. So imagine if we led our people by incentives rather than by the big stick, because they get turned on by validation. That what you are doing by being yourself, not trying to be anybody else, we know that we'll be succeeding when the same face at home is the same face at work, which is the same face in the community. That you are not trying to put on a show, because that's when the stress, the anxiety, and the depression comes in, because you are trying to be something that you are not. Those people that are doing what they love, that is enjoyable, where they feel needed and wanted, they might never have to work for an hour in their life, because they're doing things that they're passionate about, that they've spoken to their bosses, and it absolutely elevates them. Lastly, I think at boards, it's about saying, what are we measuring? If not human behavior? What are we measuring? If not human engagement? What are we measuring if not saying 50% of the board time must be tell us about our people, how you are best looking after them? Let me end by saying, imagine you work for a company of 50 people, and the one lady says, in December, I had a heart attack or a stroke, and I live in an informal settlement. A helicopter came to pick me up from an informal settlement and took me to hospital. I would never have been able to afford that if I didn't work for this company. Thank you for putting me on your medical aid. Thank you for making that medical aid to be compulsory. Because if I had my choice, I would have said, if the company pays 6,000 rand to my medical aid and I'm paying 3,000 rand a month every month, where I am in my station in life, I need the 3,000 rand. I would rather forfeit the 6,000 that is paid for by the company as a contribution, so that my 3,000 adds to my 10,000 monthly income. I'm now on 13,000 a month, and I can afford to finish my RDP house and take my kids to school. But we make it easy for them because our focus, our obsession is with our people. That's why this expression as I end, customer is king. In the boards and in companies, we realize actually the employee is king. Because when the employee is happy, he's emboldened, he's energized, the customer can feel the smile down the telephone line.
Because I think on that one, it comes back to that issue in terms of how do you ensure that the CEO does what he or she is supposed to do? Because things can be suppressed, and yet boards tend to, because I'm talking about this because it's part of leadership, where they look at it and say, but we're getting good money here. I mean, like when you look at our dividends, they're looking good. When you look at the market share, yes, we're increasing the market share. And you look at, all other things, in terms of the numbers, they seem to be okay. But people are dying down there. And how do we ensure that, because the CEO can give you something that you want to hear, but not what you need to hear. And I think that's where at times we've got leadership failure there, because at the end of the day, it comes back to the focus, to say, what is it that we are focusing? Yes, we are saying people come first, but do they really come first? And I think that's something that, companies can really, really improve, because some leaders in the hierarchy, they tend to have too much power, that is not actually regulated. And they end up doing, and then you hear employees saying, even if you report this, but it's going to come back to bite you, you're the one that's going to go. So how do we protect really? What do you suggest maybe is the way that, employees such as those can be protected? Because I think you rightfully put it before, and you said, employees know. I mean, like the CEO is not the one who must always come up with solutions. They need to bring people in, because we need to be inclusive so that people can have this sense that they are co-creating, not just the sense, they are co-creators of this environment and the culture. But how do we then ensure that we don't have leaders that are too powerful, for themselves, so that people cannot even raise issues because it's either my way or highway? And that's a reality. That's something that is there. So it becomes the culture of the organization, because it's not what is written on the walls, but it's what is being lived. What is being lived by these leaders? Because you raise an issue against so and so, then your job is gone. And many people are scared to raise issues because they know that's a reality. And when you spoke about that issue of protecting employees, I'm just so excited about that. Now, but it comes back to the issue of how do we ensure that the board is doing what it's supposed to do, so that the ExCo team that thing needs to be cascaded down. Because there's so much, because the reason why I'm raising this one, I'm passionate about it, because here's the thing, when you look at the brain itself, when you open it, you look at this, in there we've got different regions. We've got, the part of the brain that is an ancient brain, it's called the lizard brain, that does the basic functions of the, of the brain, like breathing, like controlling digestion and things like, making sure that you sleep at night. These things are done by this lowest part of the brain. And then we've got the emotional brain. So my focus is between these two brains. We've got the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking brain, the one that does, executive functions of the brain. This is the CEO of the brain. Otherwise, if this brain is not functioning, there's no planning taking place. There's no strategy taking place. There's no self-control taking place, because this acts like the brake system of the emotions. So because between the ancient brain is the part of the brain that is called the limbic system, the limbic brain. Between limbic brain, because this one is more about emotions. You're feeling, it's in the here and now. It has mastered that. It doesn't think about what if. It's only about survival. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawning is when you just give in and say, okay, let your will be done. You don't even care. It's for your own safety. Whereas thinking looks at things like the future. If I do this, there will be consequences. If I do this, there may be things that will be unintended. This is where delayed gratification is run. Here is just the here and now. So in organizations, we hire people that are highly qualified. We want MBAs. And yet, MBAs are expected to think outside the box. It means to use the prefrontal cortex. And yet, we stuff them inside the box and say, you're going to do as I say. How many great minds are hired or employed by organizations, but they don't use them because they stuff them into boxes where they end up being emotional, where it's about survival. It's no longer about thinking, because this economy that we're in is knowledge economy. And if therefore you don't use people's knowledge, instead you make them feel threatened, they're not, because in the brain it's either you think or you are sort of like emotional, you are more into survival. So you cannot do both at the same time. So we need leaders that are able to understand how the human brain works. Because for you, like you rightfully said as well, you need to be relaxed. You need to feel that I'm supported here. You need to feel that I belong here. When you do that, then you are able to bring out the best, for the organization. But when people are feeling like whatever I say, they don't care, they don't take care of it. When I want to raise a good idea, no one is going to listen to it. Then people end up just going to work, but they're not going to do anything. So I wanted to understand, to say, do you think for leaders, if someone wanted to become a leader, what advice would you give to that person and say, if you want to be a leader, these are maybe the few things that you will need to consider?
Sure. And they don't have to know the names of the brains.
No.
They don't have to know how to spell medulla oblongata.
Absolutely.
They don't have to. But they just have to understand human behavior. Not even human psychology is too big. No. Just human behavior.
What drives humans?
Yes.
What are the core human needs? Because that's what I talk about, to say, in the brain, because these are things that are driving us. They are filters. They are the ones that decide whether you're going to do something or not.
That your primary job as a leader is to get things done through others. Yes. Therefore, your job is to motivate and inspire. And it happens there.
Absolutely.
And if you understand this, you'll see your engagement, interactions, and interface with other human beings at a higher level. That's why it's called interpersonal skills.
Yes.
But it's about accepting that my job as a leader, I also need to learn from past mistakes. South Africa is replete with examples of gigantic corporate failures. The biggest corporate failure in terms of money lost is the late Marcus Justus Steinhoff. He was producing extraordinary results, amazing profits. He made Christo Visa to be amongst the top 3 richest human beings in this country.
Yes.
Before the collapse of Steinhoff, he was worth 5.4 billion South African rands. But the company died. Because your job as a leader is to do 2 things at the same time. One, ensure that we are sustainable in the short term, whilst at the same time building this notion of long-term resilience.
Yes.
Therefore, you can't immediate pleasure, immediate gain, immediate profits when you are not investing.
Yes.
Pick n Pay was the number 1 retail and supermarket out there. It was known as the friend of the consumer. It was built on motivating people. They used to take their employees to Disney World so that they can see how guests are treated. They come with superior care. They ended up realizing that it's taking them too long. They brought the academy here in Morningside and in Lone Hill. They have their own academy and say, no, the faculty come and teach these people.
Yes.
But they forgot to reinvest. And now, Shoprite Checkers is running circles around them. And the family has just relinquished control. Because again, did they pay as much attention into this notion of long-term resilience? Yes. Especially because in Africa, resilience must be much more than the food, water, energy nexus. Tonga Hewlett, 150-year-old company that the whole economy of KwaZulu-Natal was built on. It had 10 business units. One of them is Moorland, where Ushaka International Airport is built. And because of the greed of the CEO, Peter Steady, at that time, greed. You see, greed is inwardly focused. Yes. It's not looking after the well-being of the employees. And this company is a shadow of its former self. When you look at state capture and you look at companies like McKinsey, SAP, Bain & Company, they were interested in today's profits, even at the cost of destroying institutions that made us to be the pride of the world, that like the South African Revenue Services. And they killed those 5 specialized departments that looked at, one of them is illicit trade, but also the ultra-high net worth individuals. 210 senior executives were killed within 1 year of Tom Moyane coming in as the CEO. So you can see that, again, we're very short-term focused. But also at the personal level, it says, if I'm the chairman of the board and I'm the group CEO, do I create a healthy environment where my leadership can be challenged? because the good Lord can't be so unkind as to bequeath you only with the intelligence. Barack Obama says it's okay to say, I care.
Yes.
But when you say, only I care, that's ego speaking. Wow. Because if my leadership can be challenged, that makes me a questionable leader. In South Africa, this business, collectively, organized business, needs to say, we benefited from apartheid.
Yes.
In fact, apartheid survived for 48 years because we undergirded and supported it.
Yes.
And we paid black people less and women even less so. And we pocketed that as profits. Therefore, when we talk about reparations, it's about realizing that black people are not in positions of leadership, not because they are lazy.
Yes.
It's because the system made sure that they never succeed. Now, when we say social justice, these companies need to say, what more can we do to make sure that we provide these black people with the boots and the straps with which they can pull themselves up?
Yes.
It's not about handouts of corporate social investment. It's about giving them a hand up so that they can stand on their own 2 feet. Therefore, I think as I conclude, even business itself needs a serious intervention to steer it back to the correct ways. And what is needed today is decisive leadership.
Yes.
And it's about saying the essence of truth of what happened to us as a people is to let the victim speak.
Yes.
Because contrition is an ongoing process. You have to continue asking for forgiveness and be eternally grateful for the mercy shown. It's not helpful to say, we've been free 30 years. Affirmative action, BEE, come of it. You know what? We are okay now. Every man and woman for himself, only God for us all. It's about missing the point that the entire system, decades, no, centuries of suppression, of negating who they are, needs to be re-engineered back. Because that's social engineering, where the structure of the economy rested only on 3 things. One, providing a crucible supply of cheap labor forever. Number 2, these blacks must go to the belly of the earth and risk it all, including death, to bring the gold. And we have the first right of refusal. Lastly, it's about, yes, they can go and get the diamonds, but we'll determine the price. Hence the creation of the London Sales Organization. Where have you ever seen that in any marketplace, in any democracy, in any free market system, where I toil, you tell me the price?
Just and you know, we are nearing the end now. This is just so powerful. We can carry on and on. And I just want to find out, maybe is there any advice maybe about 3 things? Or what are the 3 things, before I ask that question, what are the 3 things or 3 mistakes that when you look at most leaders, they are frequently making and they are making them fail?
The first, it's not to understand themselves. Number 1.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness, self-mastery is the next one. So that you can always then look and say, if I've got 8 people in that team, there's no one size fits all. Can I invest time, energy, and effort to find out how they prefer to do things? You want big picture stuff. He wants the figures. Somebody wants third-party support. When I speak to them, I tailor the message just to you. Why? Because I want to connect at a very deep level. When I feel connected with the boss, I'll jump over the cliff for that company. The second is to make empty gestures and empty promises, like people first, when it's meaningless. To give you an example, at Shell Oil Products Africa, we had 3,820 employees. We had 10 at depots. Here in Alberton, there's a Shell Alberton depot in Alroot, and it's 72 trucks a day, every day. The smallest is 30,000 liters. If we get something wrong there, we incinerate not the Shell depot, but the entire Alberton town. It's about that awareness of the responsibility on your shoulders. So when you say people first, we used to give our employees 3 cards, red, amber, and green. And we said, on HSSE, because that's where it starts. Because on HSSE, as an acronym for Health, Safety, Security and Environment, we started by first saying, you must be safe. You at the be safe to comply. It's like in the army, don't ask questions, just comply. If it says no smoking area, you don't debate. Just don't smoke there. Lastly, it's about respecting your neighbors. So that if they catch somebody doing something that is strengthening these, they give you a green card to say, I see you, you're looking after me, continue. If you're doing something that is suspect, that not now will kill us, but tomorrow might, they give you amber. But here's the trick. Everybody had a red card. It's that even if you are talking to the group CEO and the chairman of the board and the executive vice president of Upstream, all three of them, which I was, you give them a red card. They need to stop dead in their track at that moment and stop what they're doing and watch what they're doing. And Memadi Khetsu, who makes me tea, gave me such card, red, because I was talking to Adrian Endhoven. He's coming to visit me at the Dimension Data campus. And as he's coming, he's asking me for directions, and I'm talking to him over the phone, and I'm gesturing, and in the moment, I forgot, and I'm on the phone, and I'm giving him directions, and I'm walking down the stairs with the phone on. And she's at the bottom of the stairs cleaning, because she's a cleaning lady. She looked at me, pointed the broom at me. I saw that she wanted to speak, and she gave me a red card. At that moment, I stopped dead on my tracks, directed Adrian, came back, and made it safely. That same month, when I was giving the company results, a month every month to the whole company, I started with that story to say that's why we give you red cards, so that you feel liberated to use it even against the chairman, because it's the chairman's safety and therefore your safety. We gave the same card to the security guard at Alberton Depot, where one day the bellow had burst and diesel started spewing out. 3 swimming pool fulls, 160,000 liters. And he's at the gate and smelled the fumes. And he stopped the truck to come. I mean, Shell a day sells 7.2 million liters a day, every day. Of the 30 billion liters that we sell, 20 billion, which is refined through the 5 major refineries, only 10 billion is imported. So you say 7.2 million liters a day, times 10 rand a litre, it's 20 rand a litre, times 10. Look at that, stopped. Because the security guy smelled the fume. He knew he was empowered. He looked in his top pocket, found a red card, and he said, no trucks come in. And saved the town of Alberton.
Wow. And then I'm just going to, I think we've got a few minutes. I just want to ask maybe just 2 questions. And just to find out from you, what is it? What is it that you do, even on a daily basis or so, to stay relevant? How do you keep yourself, keep yourself relevant and to keep going? How do you keep on developing yourself so that you stay on par as a leader?
3 things. 1, I never take myself seriously, but what I do seriously. Chancellor, chairman, professor. It's not who I am. It's what I do. There's a difference. So when I'm at home, I'm being ably led. It's also about saying, can I open myself to learn from others? I teach a first-year class at university, and it has never failed me. Every single solitary one of the first-year classes, I've learned more from them than they've learned from me, because I just have a receptive mind. My grandmother used to say, when the student is ready, a teacher will appear, not the other way around. The last one, it's about, I'm a voracious reader. I read anything and everything. I read other people's books. I like autobiographies. That's why I've come here, because you fascinate me. You have connected with me in a deep and profound manner. I love the way you express complex issues and you explain them in such a way that even I can understand them. In life, it's about realizing that I've got 2 divine daughters, Mkhono Tsepiso and Mkhono Mane. I thank them for giving me the vocabulary which Bantu education deprived me. Therefore, when you're open to learning from others, even nature will teach you something.
Wow. I love that, and I think we've come to the end of our discussion. I wouldn't say an interview, it's a discussion. But here's one of our parting shots. It's one of our parting shots. Now, at the end of your life, how would you like to be remembered as Bonang in a sentence? Bonang Mohale was, you gone. How would you love to be remembered?
Bonang Mohale, who absorbed so much so that in the final analysis can share it liberally with others. Because that, in the final analysis, is what we are all about. Learn and give back.
Wow. If this doesn't inspire you, I don't know then what it is that will inspire you. What a great time. Professor Bonang Mohale, thank you so very much for coming through. And you've really blessed us, and the listeners and the viewers definitely are saying thank you very much. I think I'm saying that on their behalf as well. Thank you so much for being so humble. Thank you so much for being kind, just to come through and really bless us with your presence, because we are all about transforming minds from mental darkness to mental light. And every time we do this, it always warms my heart. And it's such an honor and privilege, once again, to have you here. And may all the blessings continue to be upon you, because you are a great example, not only just to me, but to everyone out there who's willing to grow. You are an example. I normally say that when I look at the Mandelas, I don't see them as exceptions, but I see them as examples of what we can be. So until you look at life like that, you know what? You'd always feel that you are disadvantaged. You'd always feel that you are less than. And I don't feel like I'm less than anyone else, but I always feel that I can be the best that I can be. So by those words, I just want to say thank you so very kindly. Thank you so much.
Ndaba kubonga mina kakhulu Nkosi yami kuthiwa isandla ingalo yonke sindlula ikhanda amathanga ahlanzela abangana amabhoda. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof.
Nkosi yami.